before that, back when it was at Boone Tavern down in the basement. I think Charlie Christie was the Boone County chair at the time, and he was really welcoming. So you probably remember Charlie. And then Earl and Margot Lubinsky were really big on getting me involved in Muleskinners. And so I was thinking about it. It was a quarter century ago that I first spoke to Muleskinners. So my relationship with this group can now be measured on the scale of centuries. So I'm excited to be here, and I appreciate you all having me. And I appreciate the consistency of this group over a long period of time. I get kind of tired of just making basic campaign speeches. Like, y'all are kind of like the base. You don't really need to be riled up. I don't need to like tell you how important it is and what we need to do and all this other stuff. I will talk a little bit at the end about. I can sit down if that's easier.
Nope, we're getting there.
They're building you in.
Huzzah! As long as no one breathes on it.
For those watching online, if there's a tumbling, I'm probably okay. It was probably the camera. But I wanted to. So anyway, I'll talk a bit at the end about what's going on, what we can do in Missouri, and I've been involved in stuff all over the states. If people have questions, I'm happy to try to address that. But I really want to talk more in depth about something that happened at the end of session last year, which one of the things that upset me the most the legislature's done recently. And I think it's kind of at the nexus of a lot of different issues, both what we're facing in Boone County moving forward, what hopefully my role in the Senate will be, and the way that Boone County needs to approach the legislature sort of for our future. And what I'm talking about is the passage of the charter school legislation at the very end of session. So for those who don't know, charter schools have been authorized in St. Louis City and in Kansas City, and unaccredited school districts have been unaccredited for 3 consecutive years. Since around 2000, I think maybe 99 was when that was passed. And just this year, there had been no expansions since then. And this past May, there was a targeted effort that only applied to Boone County and expanded charter eligibility to only Boone County, first place outside of St. Louis, outside of Kansas City, first place that being accredited doesn't matter in the process. And that was obviously done by Caleb Rowden. I mean, he's very open about that. I have quite a bit of animosity on this issue, but none of it really towards Caleb. I disagree with Caleb, but Caleb did what he told everybody he was going to do. Nobody was under any illusions that Caleb didn't believe that. He was honest about it, disagree with him, tried to beat him, don't like the policy, but I can stomach somebody telling everybody, hey, this is what I want to do. What really was frustrating to me was that we were stabbed in the back by Democrats. Democratic senators from St. Louis and Kansas City cut deals for themselves. Some of those policy deals, some of those, quite frankly, personal deals, I believe. And these are people that I personally spent a lot of time helping get elected, that I went to their offices and asked them personally to stand up for Boone County. And they didn't. They made deals, and they're the ones that allowed this charter expansion to happen in Boone. And it was specifically done last year because it was even said on the Senate floor that they didn't think the senator from Boone next year was going to be supportive of this. So they had to do it. Last year was their window, and a group of Democrats helped them do it, and then didn't even have the guts to put their names on it or to say they were in favor of it. They voted no after cutting deals and letting it through.
What did they get out?
I don't know. That's a good question. Okay. I will tell you 3 of them have jobs now that are not Senate jobs.
Oh.
Whether those are connected or not, I do not know the answer to that question. I believe that's between them and God, them and their conscience.
Coincidence.
But the 3 of them, within weeks after this, received jobs that doubled or tripled their salary. Whether those are connected or not, I do not know. That happens sometimes. But there's some of the charitable interpretations. They got some policy changes, I guess, that they maybe wanted. But they knew specifically what they were doing. I asked them not to do it. They did it anyway. And that's between them and their conscience. And they'll deal with that. I don't, they probably all did it for different reasons. And yeah. Anyway, so big picture, why is this a problem for Boone County? Well, just charter schools in terms of quality education for children. Do I believe that there are some charter schools, like maybe a university-sponsored charter school, that can provide a good education for kids? Yeah, I do believe that. Are there some for-profit charter schools that will just drop in and not just look at it as a formula and a money-making opportunity and potentially walk away, just leaving? Yeah, I believe that too. Do I believe that the Charter School Commission, that's a stack of people appointed by a governor that's taking millions of dollars from school privatizers and doesn't care about Boone County? Do I believe that Charter School Commission is going to do a good job sifting through those charters? No, I don't. And I don't trust our children with a for-profit school that's approved by the Charter School Commission Board. That's not something I'm comfortable with. So, but let's set that issue aside. Even assuming that there was a quality charter school that had quality education for kids, there's still at least three problems with what happened. And that's kind of going to what I want to talk about. The first is it just makes it harder for a school district to plan, right? So like the school district, Cleveland Public Schools, and they passed legislation for all of Boone County. Nobody thinks we're talking about anything other than Columbia when we're talking about this. That's where the density is. They will tell you it does not make economic sense, which kind of gives away the game, to open a charter school in Harrisburg or in Sturgeon. So they are viewing the pot of students in Columbia and the money that's tied to them. That is what they're going after. So it's all Boone County, but they're talking about specifically Columbia. So we district like Columbia, where you're growing rapidly and you're trying to plan out where to build new schools, because we forget a lot of places in the state don't build new schools, right? Like it's not a problem that a challenge that a lot of districts have. It's one we're fortunate to have because we're growing and we're doing well, but it requires a lot of planning to say, where should we put the new high school? Where should we put the new elementary school? Where, and when you look at a long-term plan like that, you don't know where a school might suddenly open up. It creates just planning difficulties. Right on top of that, if a charter school, and we've seen this in Kansas City, suddenly closes, just suddenly, all those kids are coming right back into public schools, right? And so the district has to say, all of a sudden we have, 50 more kids coming into the school than we had planned for, and we don't have the teachers, we don't have the classroom space. So there's a logistical challenge that makes it more difficult when there's that. The second is the money, right? It's not just that the state money goes to the charter school. So when obviously there's state funding that's attached to students. It's not just the state money goes to the charter school. And this is what really I find incredibly insulting about what the legislature did. When a charter school opens, again, nobody from Boone County has any say on whether it does or not. It's not just the state money, it's the local money too that goes to this charter school. So we as a community vote to tax ourselves, right? We set our property tax rates within a framework set by the state, but we have a levy occasionally, right? And we vote for the levies, and we say we as a community want to pay more money because we want to put more money into our schools because we want our schools to be good. We elect the school board members that are spending our money that we voted to tax ourselves. And so we as a community have control over this process. The legislature specifically denied the citizens of Boone County the opportunity to vote on whether a charter school would open. If you get a chance to ever see her, thank Tracy McCrary. She was the one Democratic senator that really went to bat for us. I went to her and I asked her to offer an amendment that would at least give us an opportunity to vote. These are our tax dollars that we have voted to tax ourselves. Nobody in the South in the state is paying this. We're quite frankly paying a higher rate than a lot of people around the state because we care about our schools. And so we should have a say in that. Tracy McCrary stood up and offered that amendment when a bunch of Democratic senators didn't want her to and wouldn't support her doing it. So if you ever see Tracy, Senator McCrary, be sure to thank her. But I find it incredibly insulting that it's not just the state money, it's our local dollars that we voted to tax ourselves. And that the state has said the citizens of Columbia don't get to control where their own money that they've taxed themselves goes. Right. So that's the second problem. And that has obvious impacts on our current school districts when they don't even know what the revenue stream is going to be, because next year a school may open up and take a chunk of money out of our school district. The third issue that I have that's a broad philosophical issue is one that ties into what I want to eventually get to here about the long-term future of Columbia and Boone County, which is that there is a value to our public schools and having everybody in the community invested in the success of our community. that's something that's incredibly important to me, and I think incredibly important to everybody in this room, everybody online, the Democratic Party, and I would say the community at whole. And I would, as evidence, I would say the state of Missouri, as a state, is not doing particularly well. We've lost congressional districts, right? We're not maintaining population along the lines of growth around the rest of the country. So the state of Missouri has had some problems, but Boone County is growing tremendously well. People like what we're doing here in Columbia. They like what we're doing in Boone County, and they're moving here. They're voting with their feet and saying, maybe the state of Missouri, the policies aren't popular, but the policies in Boone County and Columbia are popular, and people are saying, that's where I want to live. I'm going to move here. And so I think that that's vindication for how we've sort of grown our community. But I think it's important that everybody be invested in this community. And I'm going to give you an example. So in my time, Columbia Public Schools, kindergarten through Hickman, through 12th grade, I think about the extreme diversity that I grew up around. My senior year, a kid in my class's father was murdered. Another kid in my class father became governor. Friends of mine in the Columbia Public Schools. I grew up with some of the wealthiest families. Their kids were in my class in Boone County. I'm not going to name them because that'd be kind of weird, but they were there with me. And I grew up with kids that if you go to any police officer in this community who's been a police officer for 5 years or more and say their name, they will know who they are. And we were all in a class together. And I think it's important, both in terms of seeing all pieces of the community, knowing all pieces of the community, and everybody having a vested interest in the success of our schools. Because the University of Missouri is the economic driver of our town. It's the biggest job creator. It's the economic driver. But the Columbia Public Schools are the most important institution. Right? That's the most important institution. And I've told Peter Stiepelman, I told him that the most important thing that happens in this town is redrawing the lines for schools. Whenever that's every 10 years, that is one of the most important things to make sure that we don't have areas of this town that completely get forgotten and get abandoned. So I said that I spoke here a quarter century ago for the first time. When I spoke here, Boone County was at 100,000 people as a county. It's at 180,000 now. And when as much time has passed going forward as when I first spoke here going back, we are going to be measuring the size of Boone County as compared to 1 million. We're going to be at 250,000 people. The challenge that we have over the next 25 years is how do we as a community absorb that growth, not let huge chunks of our community fall through the cracks and fall behind, and maintain the soul that has made Boone County and Columbia such a popular place to be. I remember I was at a memorial service for Clyde Wilson, and Bob Pugh spoke. And he said that he and Clyde were on the city council together when Columbia grew up. That's how he described it. And one, there's something that's important that we shouldn't be lost. The fact that Bob Pugh would speak at a memorial service for Clyde Wilson, like that doesn't happen in large places of the state. Like there is something incredibly important about people who are polar opposites politically, still respecting each other and finding a way to work together. The example I will give, because this is such a unique thing that we need to preserve. Caleb Rowden beat me in 2016, said really horrible things about me that really were pretty messed up. But the Boone County office holders down in county courthouse in the county building, who are all good friends of mine, they did the right thing and they kept working with him, even though he had said horrible things about their friend. They all tried to help. They all helped me try to beat him, but they kept working with him, and they worked together, and they got a bunch of money for the law enforcement training center. They got money for the nature school for at one point. And I can't emphasize enough to you how much that does not happen in other places in the state. So that's incredibly important, and that's something we can't lose. But as we see this population growth, the challenge that I see myself, and I see our leaders now, if Clyde and Bob were there when Columbia grew up, we've got to help Columbia transition and Boone County transition into this small metropolis of 250,000 people. And how do we do that? And making sure that everybody has a vested interest in this community and isn't able to silo themselves off in a way that they can have their own world and not care about what's happening in the rest of town is going to be something that's really important to us and a really big challenge for us. And the idea of expanding charter schools, which take control away from our community, and in my opinion, do allow people to create up things that can isolate themselves from others is philosophically a bad thing and a problem moving forward. So not surprisingly, one of my first legislative bills I'll file is going to be to try to repeal charters in Boone County. It's going to be very difficult. Like I have no under illusions that that's going to be hard to do, but that is going to be something that I work on from day one. And going forward, in terms of influencing what Boone County's mission down in Jefferson City, whether House delegation, Senate delegation, we need to put an emphasis on allowing Boone County to be Boone County. This is not the first time that we've seen the legislature step in to an issue that does not affect them in any way, that only affects us, and do something that goes against the will of our community. A few years ago, they banned cities from raising the minimum wage and from enacting any sort of economic justice policies at the local level, right? So Columbia, 20 years ago, we could have raised the minimum wage in Columbia. They took that ability away. The bill that they put that on was a bill that was specifically targeting the city of Columbia, because the city of Columbia passed a paper bag ban, and folks in Jefferson City, plastic bag, sorry, yeah, that's it, paper, yeah, plastic bag ban. I apologize. Yes, I apologize, plastic bag. And the people in Jefferson City who aren't affected by this, like, this is a fight we can have in Columbia. People in Columbia want to have an opinion on it, have an opinion on it. Talk to your city council about it. But it didn't impact anybody in Jefferson City. It didn't impact anybody in their district. It didn't impact in any way. And yet they passed a bill to say that we couldn't do it for ourselves, right? So this is a pattern and something that we are going to see accelerate over the next 20 years. Because one, the legislature, quite frankly, has run out of other things to do. And two, with this sort of social media, people are searching for cultural issues that they can try to score points on back home. And going after Columbia has been one of those things, and that's accelerating. So when I look at my role, hopefully in the Senate, when I look at the Boone County delegations, House delegation's role, we have to fight against bad, broad policy that impacts the entire state. We have to obviously advocate for good policy that impacts the entire state. We have to take special care to make clear that the legislature is not to step into issues that only impact Boone County and not anybody else. University of Missouri has a statewide mission. People can have, other legislators can have an opinion on the University of Missouri, right? A bunch of their tax dollars go to the University of Missouri. They send their kids to the University of Missouri. It's got a statewide mission. It's an economic driver. Obviously, I care disproportionately about it because so many of our folks are employed there, and it's important to our town, but it's appropriate, okay, that legislators around the state have an opinion on the University of Missouri. It is not okay that the legislatures around the state have an opinion on legal things the City Council of Columbia does, or what the Columbia Public Schools does with our own tax dollars that we decide to pay for our tax ourselves. So partly I just want to get a lot of that off my chest, but also I think it's important that people understand that is the perspective that I hope to be taking to Jeff City here in a couple months, about making sure that the fight I see for the future of Columbia and Boone County, and sort of the role that the delegation has to play in sort of protecting our community and letting our community make our own decisions. And by the way, I'm not going to agree with every decision our community makes. Y'all probably don't agree on every decision our community makes. But the reason it's our community is because we get to talk about it amongst ourselves, and we get to come to those conclusions. And if we don't like it, we can try to change it. We can advocate for it. But it's not there to score political points for people who aren't impacted by it. So I wanted to sort of give a different perspective, maybe something that you don't just hear on the campaign trail from that. Briefly, I want to talk a little bit about what's going on in around the state. I was at a fundraiser in St. Louis last night for Amendment 3. Like, this is really cool. Like, this is a really cool opportunity we have in 2 months to make some really, really important differences. And I was thinking about it in sort of the broader context. So I was thinking about it in the night in 2016, when I lost in 2016, when Eric Greitens was elected governor. If you had told me on that day that we would have blocked right to work, that we would find a way to expand Medicaid, wouldn't have believed that. That we'd find a way to clean up campaign finance limits, that we'd find a way to raise the minimum wage, not once, we did it in 2018, but hopefully soon to be twice, $18 an hour, found a way to expand earned sick time, and then put in the Constitution the strongest reproductive freedom laws that the state has ever had. I would have been like, wow, in the next 8 years, we're going to do all that with Eric Greitens being elected governor. That's crazy. And I think it's important for us to remember when we see the bad things and we get justifiably angry and upset about the bad things. We are on pace to pull out some incredible wins in a really, really difficult situation. The idea that we can have a $15 an hour minimum wage across the state and earn sick time, that we can pass these reproductive justice protections and put them in the state constitution, which I believe we're going to do. By the way, we got some polling back. Amendment 3 in Boone County, over 65% in Boone County. Like, wildly popular. And to my point earlier, hey, we're the place that's growing. We're the place that people want to come and want to be. So people want to come to an area that is supportive of these rights and these freedoms. And so we've got an opportunity to do that. Obviously, we have an opportunity to break the House supermajority. We've got to pick up 3 state House seats around Missouri. Boone County did our part last cycle. Our job was last cycle. We netted 3 total seats last cycle. 2 of the 3 we netted were here in Boone County. So we've moved the ball forward on our end. The rest of the state has to do their work, which we're helping them do, and they're going to do it. We've got an opportunity to pick up some state Senate seats. The 2 seats that I'm most excited about, other than obviously the Boone County one, but Maggie Nuremberg over in Kansas City. If you don't know Maggie, she's awesome. She's an NEA teacher in Clay County. She's running a really tough race, but I believe she's going to win it. And if you have any extra cash that you're not sending to Boone County candidates, take care of the Boone County candidates first, because Lord knows you can't count on the rest of the state to watch out for us. But Maggie Nuremberg would be a great place for that to go. And then the second is Joe Peerless. He's running in Senate 15 in western St. Louis County, Chesterfield area, and he's doing a great job. He's been on the board of the International Red Cross, just a great guy, and he's doing really well. It's a tough fight, but I think he's got a chance to actually pull it off. And if we can do that, if we can do all that, and obviously win Boone County, then we'll have broken the supermajority in the Senate as well. We need to net 2 seats over there. So we've got some really cool opportunities. I'm excited about them, and I'm excited to try to usher in a new political era here in Boone County, because Lord knows we've been held back long enough, and that's finally going to change. So I'm pretty excited about it. Happy to take any questions people have, and really thank you very much for your time and for letting me talk about it. I'm okay. I'm gonna fix it.
Yes, so there you go. So you don't have to hold it.
And I don't have to
Hey,
hold.
you forgot Patty Lewis in Kansas City.
Somebody said you forgot Patty Lewis in Kansas City.
Oh, I didn't forget. So Patty just won her primary. She's in a safe seat, like it's 80% Democrat. So she doesn't even have a general, really. I don't even know if she has an opponent. She does have an opponent? Okay. She's got an opponent, but it's Kansas City safe seat. She won a primary, replaced Greg Razor, one of the people that screwed us over.
I wondered.
Really?
Oh yeah, he was bad about it.
Got a cushy job.
Took a job, voted against letting us vote for ourselves. He was the one Democrat to vote against Boone County even having a vote on the charter school stuff. Very disappointing. And I hope he's happy with his job, but he's not relevant to this stuff anymore. And Patty Lewis He endorsed somebody else in that race, and the district was so mad at him they rejected his endorsement and went with Patty. And Patty's awesome. She's been a state rep. She's a nurse. So interestingly enough, she was the only nurse in the House. She's now going to be the only nurse in the Senate, and then Boone County's Greg will be the only nurse in that. So we'll still have one nurse in the House. It'll just be from Boone County, and then the nurse that was in the House will be over in the Senate. And so I'm really excited to work with her. I didn't serve in the House with Patty. She got elected, I think, 4 years ago. So I've worked with her, through my work with the labor unions, but I've never actually been in the legislature with her. I'm really excited to do that. So she's great.
Back to charter schools.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Yearwood wrote an op-ed saying that it was unconstitutional to pass a law that only dealt with Boone County. So does that mean they will sue if somebody does come up with?
So the law just went into effect August 28th, so like 2 weeks ago is when the law went into effect. I think there will be a lawsuit. I'm not sure if it's going to be preemptive or only when one occurs. I'm not sure about the plan on that, but it is going to be challenged. And just to harp on this, the superintendents of all the districts, not just Columbia, all around Boone County signed a letter asking that this not be done. The commissioners spoke out, asked that it not be done. And not, you all know this, but the senator that did it, Rowden, never won Boone County, right? Like he never got the most votes in Boone County. He always won because of Cooper. So there was a very, I guess, strange honesty in Jefferson City that even the proponents were fully aware that people here did not want it done. Like nobody was even pretending. Like it was just like, yeah, we know you don't want it, but we're going to force it on you anyway because it's the end of our window. And nobody was arguing that this was a popular thing in Boone County. They were just arguing that we didn't have any choice and we had to take it. And so I'm going to go down there, I think, fully armed with as much evidence as humanly possible that people in Boone County don't like this, and it doesn't impact anybody else's district. And so if it doesn't impact anybody else's district in any way, and we don't want it, then it'd be pretty messed up if they don't want to change it. They're not going to change it because they get a lot of money, but we're going to fight about it.
Were the Democrats who voted against this all term limited, or will we have to serve with them? How do we deal with that?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer yet. No, so 3 of them left. No, there's a bunch of other ones that I went and talked to, and St. Louis, and I haven't decided how to deal with that yet.
That they'll be there with you.
Yeah, I'm still thinking about it.
Yeah.
It's not going to be forgotten, and if they come try to raise money in Boone County, I hope that everybody will help me remind them that they probably shouldn't do that. But yeah, it's I don't know. I'm trying to figure that out, and it's a tough balancing act because I want to get things done, and I don't want to go down there and just fight with everybody, but I also want to lay down a marker that if you step into an area that's not yours for a reason that doesn't impact your district, again, like if we disagree on something, fine, I understand that. Like I don't expect that I'm going to get to write the policy for the University of Missouri. I understand, I get it, but that's going to be a tough balancing act, and I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to handle that yet. And I spent a lot of time thinking about it.
They're already fighting among themselves too.
The Republicans are, yeah, they are big time.
Yeah.
So how would the landscape change if we could elect Crystal Quaid to governor and also impact what we want to do in terms of repealing charter schools?
I don't know if it would make a big difference on repealing charter schools. It would be huge for the state. Yeah, it would be huge. Having a Democratic governor would be phenomenal. It's a massive climb, but it would be incredible if we could get it done. Yeah, and that's why that's when breaking. So in the Senate, I want to this breaking supermajority thing. It's important because it's a goal. Like it's an important stepping stone. In the Senate, it takes 2/3 to change the rules. So one of the benefits of the supermajority is not just 50%; it's over 2/3. So if we could get over, because we have less than a third of the seats in each chamber right now, if we get over a third, they can't change the rules unilaterally, which is a pretty big deal. There's some other things in terms of like emergency clauses that need 2/3 to do. But the big piece of getting out of the supermajority is if you pair that with the governor, then they can veto bills and you can uphold their vetoes, right? So that, and when Nixon was governor, we could uphold the vetoes the first 4 years. And then in 2012, we became the superminority. And then the last 4 years, they could override his vetoes on things. And so they did that on a bunch of issues. And so being able it's that pairing that is the real, like that's the real break on their power.
This is sort of a random question on chat. David Leupold asks, could you explain the Missouri Scholars Program? Is it public funding for private schools? He just doesn't know what Missouri Scholars is.
Oh, is that the
thing?
the voucher stuff?
No, that's the juniors, the rising juniors. I think a couple from each school.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, I'll answer it in chat.
I'd like to ask you to tell us a little more about your campaign. When you came out, you got lots of support, I think lots of money, and we see you showing up for other candidates. And today there's a big announcement from the Harris Waltz campaign that they are doing this in red states too.
Yeah.
So maybe talk a little bit about that. And I'll just say that we have a campaign chest here at Muleskinners. I'm going to give our treasurer a check for it. And I'm going to give you a check for doing that kind of work.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so one of the lessons I learned in 2016, I try to take lessons from bad things that happen, whether it's to me or other candidates or state or politics. One of those is that it's really difficult to outwork big structural challenges that you face. And in 2016, we faced big structural challenges like redistricting, like a campaign finance system that allowed people to pour millions of dollars of money directly into a candidate committee. And so the work of turning Boone County blue has never been a thing that people ever weren't trying to do or weren't working on constantly. But I will say that over the last 5 or 6 years, there's some big structural pieces that we tried to put in place. The biggest one being redistricting. That really, and I was pretty involved in that process, that allowed us to pick up House seats and I think hopefully eventually a Senate seat here. We're targeting Clean Missouri, which changed some of the campaign finance laws. So this is really, really in the weeds stuff. But for example, so David Humphreys would write $1 million checks to candidates. Mm-hmm. And, I would have to, when I was trying to keep up with them, like for Judy in 2020, like you just had to keep raising all this money and then they just drop $1 million check.
But that goes to a PAC.
Now it does, yeah. And it's not ideal. It's not like, that's not a great scenario. But it actually does level the playing field in one way, which again, we are super in the weeds here, but when you're buying TV ads, candidates get a rate that's about 50% of what the PACs pay. If I raise $500,000 from people in Boone County now, and they write $1 million check, like in terms of actually being able to buy TV ads for even, does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what that does, there's a giant loophole for self-funders because self-funders are constitutionally allowed to just, so we've seen that with another Republican side with David Wassinger being Lincoln Huff. Like that was basically a result of the current campaign finance structure where Wassinger put a few $1 million into his own campaign, which meant that he could get the candidate rate, whereas Lincoln raised into his PAC, so he got a worse rate and he lost by 1. So we're super in the weeds, but like that. So at this point, if they were to drop $1 million into my opponent's campaign, they'd only get a $500,000 bang for the buck because I've been spending 2 years raising money from real people and putting it in my candidate committee. So it makes it harder for them to come up like right behind at the very end and just kind of clock you in the back of the head. And so that's a big structural win. And I think you'll see, I think one of our commitments as a team, is to make sure that we make Boone County as blue as possible all the way through. And I think spending is going to reflect that in terms of how we try to run our campaign, how we try to turn out in ways to help other candidates as well. Yeah, and that's been a long time goal of mine for Boone County to be as blue as can possibly be. And I think in 60 days we're going to get pretty darn close. There's a few things we're going to have to tweak over the next few years, and we'll work on trying to do that. But I think we're going to be pretty darn blue here in 60 days.
We've got a question from the Tillamas. Do you want to unmute and ask your question?
This is Sue Tillema. Sorry, my husband asked me a question and I got confused as to what I was thinking of asking, but I remember finally.
So you were probably there. You're probably there when I spoke in 2000, I bet.
Oh, yeah.
No, I probably was, but let me just tell you. First, I want to thank you for what you did when you were state chair of trying to get it so that there are more candidates in local races,
Yes.
Democratic candidates. I would like to know if, and I'm sure you've been following that now, how is that, what do you see now on the number of Democratic candidates for the statewide offices as far as, the House and the Senate? How is that
it's
going?
good. So I was really proud in 2018. I think we had, I forget the number, I think we had 151 House candidates out of 163 districts. And there were 17 Senate districts up. We had 17 Senate candidates, which was actually double what we had the year before. So going back to trying to take lessons. So in 2016, we were basically the only competitive Senate race. And as y'all probably recall, like just the amount of money that got dumped into here was crazy. I think I spent 1.8 million and Rowden spent 2.5. And then I think they spent even more in 2020. It was just insane.
Twice that.
Yeah. And so one of the things we had to try to do when I was party chair was I was like, we have to compete everywhere. We have to spread out the field. We have to, make sure that they have to fight for everything. And we came pretty darn close to doing that. It's a little bit less this year, but it's still significantly more than we've seen in previous years. I think they were going to say like 140 maybe for the House candidates. So it's a pretty solid number. And we've got people, 2014, we didn't have anybody even, there was the auditor's race. We didn't even have an auditor candidate. Y'all recall, there was literally nobody even ran. It was the only statewide race on the ballot that year, and we didn't have a candidate. And so, the fact that we have people running in tough races every spot is a big deal.
And then
I want to also just thank you for your explanation of what happened on the schools. I appreciate a more thorough explanation. It's sometimes hard to get it from the news.
Yeah, and I know I really went. I went to them. I was in their office. And I asked them all not to do it, and it was really disappointing. One last thing I want to say about the candidates. Hopefully he pulls it off. But if he doesn't, then it's a tough climb with the U.S. Senate race. But there's two ways. One of my arguments when I was party chair was like, you can't just look at wins and losses. Like obviously, like there are some seats that it's just the wins and losses, right? Like Senate 19 in Boone County this year, if we lose, it's not gonna be any moral victories. Like it's gonna be like just a straight up loss.
Yeah.
I don't think it's gonna happen, but if it did. But there's some tough races where there's other ways to win too. And Josh Hawley is a totally different person now than he was 6 years ago. He's just flat out different on things, right? And that's a result of Lucas Kunz running against him. And he's changed his positions to try to secure his reelection. And I don't like that he did that, but I do prefer that he have more centrist positions. So do I trust that he's not going to go back? No, I don't trust that at all. But I do want to say, like, part of the reason that it's important to have candidates and to be pushing is because if we don't, like, they're totally untethered and they can just totally go as far to the extreme as they can. And the fact that they even have to like worry about fighting is important to trying to keep them somewhat responsive to the people of Missouri. So I want to make sure I point that out because I think that's a win that's already happened.
From that perspective, even the forms that these people like you and voters have make them put forward a position officially, and they get on the record And now Republicans refuse to even show up at these forums and get on the record as having a position. I mean, Trump doesn't have a position paper, right? So I don't know how we hold people accountable if we can't at least make them show up to a forum and say what they believe in.
It's wild. So this is the most apples to apple. Like, there's not too many times where you like have a particular type of race, and then like a decade later, you run like basically the same type of race, and just can really see how the environment has changed. And compared to 2016, like the lack of media is just stunning. Like you can really feel it. Like there's less of it. You know, in particularly Boone County, where we always have had a ton of media. And when I first ran, it was, you know, Jason Rosenbaum and Rudy Keller and just all sorts of reporters that were always, you know, asking you questions. They were at the forums, they were reporting on the forums, they were doing blogs on the forums. And you can really feel that that's a tremendous difference. Like it's way more casual. There's less media, there's less accountability, and it's way more casual than it was in 2016. Compared to 2008, to your point, when I ran for the House the first time. In 2008, everybody was showing up at forums, and you could watch this like progression of Republican candidates going to forums, Republican candidates going to forums and just not saying anything. And Rowden was the master of that, man. Like that guy would talk for 2 minutes and you'd have no idea what he said at the end of it. His own people would be like, yeah, that's like his greatest strength. He's phenomenal at it. No, I mean, like he would you ask a question about Medicaid, and you walk around and be like, I have no idea what that guy just said. To eventually just not even showing up to forums anymore, and they don't for the most part. And that's kind of been tied into the lack of media. And part of that is money. Like as more and more money has come into politics, it is just easier to communicate the message that you want to communicate, like on your own terms. And so people are deciding, if we have $3.5 million on a Senate race, then we don't need to go to the forum to tell people what we think, because we're just going to hammer them on TV and hammer them in the mailboxes with our own message. And that's a real big problem that the country, not just Boone County, but the whole country's facing.
David Leupold's been very patiently waiting to ask a question at home. We'll take him just a second to unmute.
Oh, good. Could you please explain what they call the Missouri Scholars Program that the three Republican candidates for state treasurer were all saying they would expand? And that sounds to me like a program in which people are giving money and getting tax credits for scholarships to private schools.
Are you talking about under the treasurer's office? So part of the 727, which is the bill that expanded the charters in Boone County, they also raised the cap on what you're talking about. What's the technical name of it? I can't recall. It's
One of those savings plans?
No, it's not a savings plan. It's
Separate.
Yeah, it's under the treasurer's office. It's basically backdoor vouchers.
Okay, that's not Missouri Scholars Academy.
No, it's a different. It's you're David. You're right. They are. It's scholarships that the state is providing, which can be used for private schools, and they have raised the cap on what the state is willing to contribute to that. So they're taking our tax dollars for that. Yeah, 100%. It's a backdoor voucher program, and that was part of the two worst things in 727, which was the bill that I'm talking about, was the charter expansion in Boone County and the additional funding of the voucher program that they raised the cap on. So yeah, those are two. That was the other problem with that bill. You're right.
So you talked about charter schools for Boone County, but we're having a double whammy with the senior property tax. What about a bill to repeal the fact that the preemption that you can't have a means test on wealthier households who would seek that tax?
I'll talk to the county commissioners about that. You're right. So one of the challenges that local government has is, like, as mandates come down, whether it's that or whether it's the charter stuff, it makes it more difficult for them to just figure out and control their local budgets. So I'll talk to them about that. I'm a little bit hesitant just because Citizens of Columbia Boone County did vote on it. And that's one of the principles that I do think is important, that even if something I'm not particularly wild about.
Wasn't it passed on the state level that we couldn't have a means test or something, or
I
did it
think-
not pass?
There's been a bunch of different legislation on that. I don't know. And there also there's some court challenges on that. So, but I want to definitely gonna work with the county commission to do what we can to try to make that as clear as possible. I do think it's important that when Boone County voters decide something, we respect that. But by and large, I think that the state shouldn't be we should be letting Boone County run ourselves for the most part.
We've got about 3 more minutes. The Tillemans have the question.
Thank you, Stephen, for once again speaking truth on behalf of good things as you have done for state and this community. And I thank you specifically for emphasizing some issues of public education. Public education support in this state is bad or poor by comparison with most of the nation. We rank per capita ahead of the Marianas and Guam, and sometimes, but not always, Mississippi and Alabama. That's about it. This suggests a fundamental problem of attitude across much of this state. What can we do to improve that attitude?
It's tough because changing the attitudes of the state is very difficult. Look, one of the major, it's not a secret, right? Like we've cut taxes in the state. And when we cut taxes in the state, there's less revenue. We've cut corporate taxes substantially over the last 25 years, really since Matt Blunt became governor and signed the first corporate tax cuts. I remember they eliminated the corporate franchise tax, which is the tax on corporations that had assets over $10 million. And I got a printout from the Department of Revenue. They wouldn't tell me who everybody was paying it, but they would tell me how many companies in each county were paying it. And, it's almost all entirely St. Louis, Kansas City, Boone County, Greene County. Very few rural companies paying it. And I took it to a Republican legislator, and I was just like, why would you go for this? This is a tax that nobody in your district is paying. And literally nobody in your district is paying it. And it's going to cut, I think it was like $300 million around out of the state budget. And that money's going to come out of your schools. So you're going to vote for a tax cut that nobody in your district gets, that the people that do get it, heck, most of them are like multinational companies anyway, aren't even headquartered here. So like the only change they see is on their ledger for their Missouri accounts, like, a 1/10 or 0.2%. Like it's not and the money comes out of your local schools. And, we're now seeing a lot of local schools that are going 4 days a week, including some in Boone County. So I was like, this wasn't public. I wasn't trying to get him on the, I was just like, I really am trying to understand why you do this. And his eye just kind of glazed over. Because I just like tax cuts.
Yeah.
That's what he said. And look, nobody wants to pay more taxes than they have to. I get that. I'm not trying to say that like that's the answer. But you have to have a tax policy that enables you to run your state. Right? You have to have highways, you have to have schools, you have to have teachers, you have to have mental health, you have to have safety net hospitals that take care of people. These things have to happen. And one of the most bizarre things that I just don't understand, there's a complete lack of belief in the Republican Party that tax rates and revenues are in any way correlated. I'm not kidding. They do not see those two things as connected. I think they're two entirely separate numbers that have nothing to do with each other. I'm not kidding you. If you hook them up, over half of them just think they're two totally random numbers. I don't know, just a random tax rate. And who knows what the revenue? It's a mystery. We don't know where it comes from. And
I go back to my people and say, cut your tax.
Yeah, and part of the problem now we have with term limits is that everybody wants to say they cut taxes. And look, man, nothing in life, very few things in life should go one direction all the time. That's just not a sustainable thing for there's a few exceptions, right? Like, but for the most part, like, so if somebody says, hey, we want to rebalance the tax structure in Missouri, we want to figure out a way to make it more equitable. We want to figure out a way to, we think this for some, cool, I'm totally all about understanding. But the idea that it only can go one direction all the time, it has to go that direction. And then the worst part is what they're doing now is they're putting in triggers. So they don't even deal with the tax cut. Like, they say, hey, we passed the tax cut. They go home and brag about the giant tax cut. And it doesn't even go into effect until they're term limited out. And then somebody else is dealing with the problem, right? So if we didn't have term limits, if we had a chair of the transportation committee that was taking a 10-year view of our highways and had to deal with the budget on an ongoing basis, then maybe we'd have a different perspective. But when you have 8 years that everybody's gone in 8 years, they don't ever have to deal with the consequences of their own actions. And this short-term satisfaction of campaigning on I cut taxes is just irresistible to so many people that you end up in this situation. And so I don't like it, but like part of our role is to try to fight back against that and to try to be the ones that say, hey, like, again, happy to have a conversation about a better tax system for sure. But the idea that revenue can only go one direction just doesn't make sense.
I want to ask about the campaign. Are you doing door knocking or you have signs?
And can I roll into that, the last online question from Ruth, who wants millage, who'd like to know if you publicly post requests for volunteers to help with events. So just sort of a general, how can we help?
Yeah, so not this Saturday, because Saturday we got a game day, but next Saturday, not next Saturday is like tomorrow, right? Yeah. So 8 days from now, I'm actually knocking for Maggie tomorrow. But 8 days from now, so on the 14th at 10 o'clock, we share an office space down on Ash Street, the old England Woods building. It's for sale right now, but we've got it for a couple months. And so ourselves and the Amendment 3, the pro-choice initiative, like we're in the office together. And so we're doing a canvas 10 o'clock on the 14th. We'll be posting more about them every week, I think probably from now on. Houston Roberts, we just brought him on as our field coordinator, field director. And so we're going to be doing that. Yard signs, we're going to have them. They've been ordered. We're going to have them soon.
Are you going to bring some here?
We'll bring them here. Yes, we will. And I don't think we're doing any 4x8s. So we're not going to ask you to put in any poles, but we're going to have
4x3 size.
We've got just regular
Yard signs.
Yeah,
Okay.
yard signs. So those will be coming in. Like, I guess I'm kind of old school. Like, we've been stockpiling money for 2 years now, and the next 60 days we're gonna spend it. So you're gonna be seeing a lot of, in about 2-3 weeks, you're gonna be seeing a lot of stuff. So yeah.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank y'all. I appreciate it.